As somebody with foreskin, that is very true.
What's on my beard? What happened to my beard?
All right, Chuckle Fucks, shut up, clock in, load up. We're talking about Call of Duty for right now.
Oh yeah.
More specifically, Call of Duty Zombies. Previously once called Nazi Zombies, but around 2015, mid-2010s, they changed the name because feelings.
I mean,
You're right. If you had one, I'd subtract one for that.
you got inspiration.
Yeah, inspiration. You have a grace. You have a grace point. You're minus one to merit. So the way this lecture is formatted is generally going to be the inverse of what Professor Zoriandi went over with his lecture. This lecture will be about the story of the Call of Duty Zombies storyline. Specifically the storyline, not exactly the timeline. Spoiler alert, there are time loops inside of time loops inside of time loops in this one. So although there is a point where we could start off on, I feel like it would be a more unique experience to present the zombie storyline as the games and the maps came out in order. So to start off, we'll be going back to the year 2008 when Call of Duty World at War came out. Now, at the time, nobody knew about the Zombies game mode. It wasn't until people started completing the campaign, you finish the end credits, then you're greeted with an eerie cutscene. Blurry, blinking vision. Something coming at you over the horizon. A destroyed, burning airplane off on the side. This creature running at you, blinking. Every time you blink, it's closer and closer, cut to black. Bleeding onto the screen, Nazi zombies. Then you're placed into the very first Call of Duty's map. Nacht der Untoten. German for Night of the Undead. Now, as I go through these maps, there is plenty of lore, information that we now know after the fact, that is revealed through each of these maps. I will not be revealing everything, every bit of lore through these maps as they go through. Now, of course, the zombie storyline has wrapped up for the most part, so it has become difficult to really distinguish what was originally available lore at the time and what we now know retroactively. I will try my best to pick out what was known at the time, what we only knew at the time. At the time, it was nothing more than a very simple, bare-bones survival game mode. You had nothing but a pistol, and there were chalk outlines of various weapons on some of the walls in this two-story ruined house, it seemed like. Wave after wave after wave of zombies trying to kill you. And every time you killed or shot something, you gained points. And with those points, you bought those weapons from those chalk outlines on the wall. That seems strange. You were able to buy doors to progress to other areas of the map, a mystery box that you could use to gain some random weapon to help you survive. At the time, that's all it was. Nothing more than just how far can you go? How far can you survive? Very basic map, 2 floors, not much to it. Now, back in 2008, it was still a time when DLC map packs were still very much a thing. So it wasn't until the next map pack for the multiplayer that fans were surprised to learn that a new map for zombies was being released. This map in the timeline or storyline is called Verrückt. This one happens September 6th, 1945. Same year, couple months later. Verrückt. Another German name for, rough translation, for an asylum. This time, you found yourself in an abandoned, derelict, insane asylum, where you could still hear the echoing screams and cries of those that were once here, many tortured. Something else I forgot to mention in the first map in Knockdown Toten was the characters you were playing, up to 4 people. Unnamed Marines. No names, no backstories, no lore, just survive. Similar thing happens in Verrückt. Mostly unnamed soldiers except for one, Tank Dempsey. American Marine with the other ones. Now some improvements have been made to the game. More boons, perkaholic, was not perkaholic, but perk-a-cola machines, soda machines that you could drink out of and gain special perks and abilities. New weapons, and the introduction of hellhounds. These demonic, fiery, burning dogs that would try and attack you and explode when hitting you. At this point, still not much lore, if any lore at all. The time was very, very just ran on just its aesthetics, very creepy, very run down. The third map in this, in World at War, in the third DLC, Shino Numa. This one happens in October 21st, still the same year, 1945. Shino Numa. This time, we now have names for all 4 playable characters. Tank Dempsey, returning from Verrückt. Takeo Masaki, a Japanese soldier. Nikolai Belinsky, a Russian soldier. And Richtofen, Dr. Edward Richtofen, a German Nazi scientist. Well, more German scientist than just Nazi. These 4 individuals found themselves at Shinonuma, which we now know is a Japanese research facility in Tungusk, I believe. It was in the middle of a swamp, very run down. This is where we start to see the first bits of lore being introduced into Nazi Zombies. In the spawn room, when you first start the game, in one of the corners, you find a dead, hanging body. No name, no explanation, a dead, hanging body. Was he hung? Not sure. Now at the time it could be explained that just graphical limitations, you couldn't see where the rope connected to, but most assumed they hung themselves or maybe they died and got stuck from parachute ropes, what have you. And they were missing their left arm, cut off at the forearm. This is also a map where we see, at the time when Call of Duty was still pretty popular on PC releases, on the PC version of World at War, people were able to mod it and clip through the map. This is how we found out about a strange, glowing meteor found somewhere along the edges of the map. This meteor we know through various radios and other collectibles found around the map. This meteor was responsible for was the source of something called Element 115, Element 115. Not much information aside from that. Element 115, everyone assumed that was what was causing these zombies, these undead, to reanimate. Why were these four here? Why were they suddenly given names? Not much was really much explained. Not until the fourth and final map of World at War. This map takes place very, very soon after, chronologically, in October 28th, 1945, Der Riese, German for the giant. This time, we find ourselves our same four characters from Shinonuma. Takeo, Nikolai, Tank, and Richtofen in a Nazi research facility. This is where the lore truly began for the Nazi zombie storyline. An abundance of collectible radio sound bites, an actual Easter egg to be uncovered. The way the Easter eggs worked out in the Nazi Zombies games is they worked very similar to dungeons and raids and strikes in the Destiny games, where there's these secret triggers, ciphers, clues hidden around the game, around the map, that you had to sequentially complete. Now this is the first one of its kind in Nazi Zombies. It was very simple. It didn't really give too much lore in and of itself. It was simply throwing a monkey bomb into a furnace, the voice of an angry child crying about you throwing Mr. Monkey into the fire. Now, bringing back that information about PC modders being able to clip through the map and find other information, we find shadows of hanging bodies, but no actual physical hanging bodies around. We see shadows of teddy bears, and actual teddy bears hidden around the map as well. It's at this juncture that I want to emphasize that the way we learn the lore about the zombie storyline through these games is through four major ways. First one, trailers / intro cutscenes as you load into the game or start off the game. Second would be collectibles, mostly radios and ciphers hidden around the map. Third, individual Easter egg steps can imply lore directly or indirectly. And fourth, the ending of the Easter egg and or ending cutscenes if you complete that Easter egg. When we are at Der Riese, we don't get much in the way of lore through direct Easter egg information. It's mostly through the collectibles. The Zombies development team is very much barely realizing the potential that this game mode can have. It was exciting, it was incredible at the time. This random game mode that no one had known about until after the game had released and people had started completing the main campaign, the main story mode, that people started realizing this game mode existed. People wanted more, so they gave people more. More maps, more elaborate stuff. From the collectibles in the Der Riese facility, we learned a couple of things. We learned that Dr. Edward Richtofen worked at this research facility under another research doctor, Dr. Ludwig, not Ludwig at the time, but Dr. Maxis. Dr. Maxis had a daughter, Samantha, who he sometimes brought to the research facility. Some other things we learned through the collectibles in this map is that Dr. Richtofen, Dr. Maxis, my bad, had gifted his daughter a German Shepherd as a gift for his daughter. Dr. Maxis and Dr. Richtofen did not really get along very well, mostly because Dr. Richtofen had truly believed in the original mission statement of this facility, which we also learned was called, for this facility, the group was called Group 935. The original mission statement for Group 935 was to improve the human condition. Now, Dr. Maxis, the head of this organization, realized can't do much to further this research if we don't have funding. So he gained funding through the Nazi Party. And as such, as part of the deal, was required to develop weapons for the Nazis to win World War II. Richtofen did not agree with this and was truly trying to better the human condition through other experiments, namely the matter transference device, a teleporter. After a lot of failed experiments, we learned that eventually the MTD does work, except they don't teleport instantaneously. Any test subjects they would send would not appear in the receiving end, but instead would take a while. X amount of time, and by the time they came back transformed. Aggressive. Undead zombies. Dr. Maxis didn't want Dr. Richtofen continuing this research any further, but Dr. Richtofen, being Dr. Richtofen, decided to continue doing this behind his back with another fellow associate, Dr. Groff. Wanting to keep things hidden, he decided to continue these experiments, testing it on himself. Yes?
Dr. Richtofen was the one who made the deal with the Nazis to...
Dr. Maxis.
Dr. Maxis.
He was the head of Group
He was
935.
like, I don't like that.
Dr. Richtofen didn't like that.
Dr. Richtofen didn't like that?
Yeah,
But Dr. Richtofen-
he was more interested in the science behind it.
Okay, but he wants to keep doing the messed up stuff with zombies teleporting.
Yes.
Dr. Maxis opposes that and supports the Nazis?
He didn't support the Nazi movement, but he did it to gain funding for Group 935.
I want to know which scientists I'm rooting for before we get to the science.
Hold on to that. So, where was I? Oh yes, so Dr. Richtofen, question.
Why couldn't I play Call of Duty Zombies on my Wii after I beat War at World from my Blockbuster copy?
I didn't realize World at War was available on Wii.
Yeah, and I'm very disappointed now, currently.
Perhaps it wasn't available on the Wii because the Wii sucked as an actual console.
They
So Dr. Richtofen decided to continue these experiments mostly on himself, testing the MTD himself, asking Dr. Groff to send him in the teleporter. It started to work. He found himself teleported somewhere else. It was dark. He felt a sense of weightlessness. He found himself in this strange chamber, a dark black pyramid in the center of this room. He learns he had teleported himself to the moon. And that pyramid, which he dubbed the mysterious pyramid device, the MPD, very creative of them, he went out and touched it. And when he did, that's when he was, we'll say, contacted by something. After he made contact with the MPD, he started hearing voices in his head. His behavior more erratic, schizophrenic to some even, referring to voices speaking to him. Yes.
Would I be wrong in saying that Moon's haunted?
Not yet.
All right.
Not yet. And we learn that in this same map. With these radios, he eventually just teleports back to the Duries facility, just as a continuation of the same teleporting process, tells Dr. Groff of what he found, and Dr. Schuster, another associate of his, and with those two behind Dr. Max's back, establishes a base on the moon to continue research on that pyramid, the MPD. These voices were telling him about strange new dimensions, powers, otherworldly beings. Very, very esoteric, mysterious stuff at the time. None of it was explained at the time. Now, this is also where we learn where those hellhounds had come from in Beirut. During one of those radios, we can hear the audio logs of Dr. Maxis testing the teleport device, the MTD, the matter transference device, on Samantha's dog. It kind of works. And when the dog returns, it is transformed into the hellhounds we see starting from Beirut. Samantha comes into the research room at this time, completely terrified, with the hellhound trying to attack everyone. In this room, the important figures in this room are Samantha, Dr. Maxis, and Dr. Richtofen. Fed up with Dr. Maxis's decisions on Group 935, he seizes this opportunity to wait until Dr. Maxis and Samantha and the now transformed hellhound are all inside the matter transference device. He hits the button, sends them off. We don't learn where they go at this time. Some backstory about the characters we also discover is that aside from Dr. Richtofen, the other three characters seem to be expressing some forms of amnesia. They don't really know who they are, why they're there, why they're even friendly or trying to survive with each other. They're just kind of there. Obviously, their natural survival instincts kicked in and they're just trying to survive with whoever they're with. That is what we learn from Duries at the end of World at War.
Sorry, there were a lot of names.
Yes, there's a lot of names.
You said Dr. Richtofen is also one of the playable characters on the map?
Yes.
Okay, I was making sure it was also Dr. Richtofen.
Yes.
Two of the maps.
So the first one, Nocturne Toten, 4 unnamed Marines. Varuk, 3 unnamed Marines, and Tank Dempsey, the American Marine.
But
Shinonuma, all 4 are named. Tank Dempsey, the American Marine. Takeo Masaki, the Japanese soldier. Nikolai Belinsky, the Russian soldier. And Dr. Edward Richtofen, the German scientist.
And it's the same gang.
The same gang in Duries. It isn't until now. Later on, during the CoD Zombies game releases, map releases, there are some remasters, some re-releases of some of these maps. Namely these were the 4 original very popular ones, so these were remade I think twice overall. So with each new iteration, the maps played essentially the same with some new collectibles to reveal even more lore of what's happening here. And at this point we learn why this group was both at Shinonoma and Duries. We learned that Dr. Edward Richtofen was with those 4 at Shinonoma because he was looking for his diary, his journal, his scientific logs. Once he found his diary at Shinonoma, he went to Deriz with the other three. That is World at War in 2008. Now, the way Call of Duty works is there were two development studios at the time, Treyarch and Sledgehammer Gaming. Oh, Infinity Ward, my bad. Sledgehammer Gaming helped Infinity Ward. But Infinity Ward and Treyarch, and they took one after the other. So the next year, no Call of Duty Zombies. That was Treyarch's IP. Then Infinity Ward, the following year, in 2010, Black Ops, Call of Duty Black Ops. This time, when they announced the game, not immediately, but as the game is nearing release, we learned that there will officially be a Zombies map at launch. Now, the way the main menu worked in Black Ops was you were from the perspective of someone tied to an interrogation chair with TV screens in front of you. It was set in the Cold War era, 1960s. Now, what most people didn't know right away was that if you mashed the triggers back and forth, eventually your character, the POV, the character you were playing as, would break out of the chair. You're able to walk around the interrogation room, and behind the interrogation chair was a computer. At the computer, one of the things you could play was Zork, some old RPG game, type RPG game. And if you typed in, I believe, Pentagon, you would unlock an extra Zombies map. First, we'll be covering the first map that released with the game on launch. This first map takes place in the year, the only important part is the year, 1963. Almost 20 years after these maps. Kino der Toten, German for Theater of the Dead. The interesting part, as soon as we load in the map, this is where we first get our first, not an intro cutscene, but during the loading screen, we get an audio sound, a sound bite of Dr. Richtofen recording just a voice memo, a voice log, an audio log. In that audio log, as we're loading into the map, very likely for the first time, we hear that he says, Tank Dempsey had overloaded one of the teleporters at Deriz with the Wunderwaffe DG2, an electricity-based weapon, one of those weapons designed for the Nazis as part of the deal with Dr. Maxis and the Nazi Party. It overcharged the teleporter, and it teleported those 4 characters not only over space, but through time, nearly 20 years into the future. Kino der Toten, a theater that was repurposed for more research. It was a front for another research facility under Group 935, the same group from World War II, Dr. Maxis' organization. Of course, 20 years later, World War II is over. Kino der Toten is abandoned, but there are still plenty of remnants left over from when the organization was still there. We learn from the collectibles and the radios there. Not really collectibles, but instead, since it's a theater, what we find instead are reels, tape reels, that you can place into the projector in the projector booth and see onto the screen. We see what look like conditioning films. Film designed to condition probably people at first glance, but this is Call of Duty Zombies. Since they were getting zombies from the teleportation tests, why not try to use them? Recondition them, use them for the war. Obviously, this didn't really work, but this is what we learned was going on a lot at this facility in Berlin. Not too much information aside from that is learned. They teleported from Der Ries across space and time to Kino der Toten, the same 4 characters from before. Tank Dempsey, Nikolai Belinsky, Takeo Masaki, and Dr. Edward Richardson. Question.
So one, we know why they went to Shinonuma for the diary.
Yes.
We don't know why they went to Der Ries yet.
Not yet.
And they're not zombified when they come out 20 years later?
Nope.
Alright, I just wanted to make sure.
Nope. You're not zombified. Now, the second map that was available that you unlocked from breaking out of the chair, typing the code into the computer, this one takes place November 6th, 1963. This one was dubbed simply 5. This map takes place at the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, United States of America. This is the map where people, as a lot of people are familiar with the playable characters John F. Kennedy, Robert McNamara, Richard Nixon, and Fidel Castro. This one comes with an intro cutscene. This cutscene shows these 4 individuals speaking inside I guess just a general office room. They hear strange noises coming outside. Richard Nixon freaking out, saying there's somebody trying to break in. John F. Kennedy tries to calm him down, telling him it's just a storm outside. Zombies start breaking the glass of the doors. Kennedy leads them to an armory where they arm up to defend themselves against the zombies that are somehow at the Pentagon. There is no true Easter egg here. Neither was there at Kino der Toten, but we learned that there is this new mini-boss found in 5, dubbed the Mad Scientist. Every couple of rounds, similar to the Hellhounds, this strange man with a lab coat and a satchel would chase you around trying to take whatever weapon you had in your hand. We had no name for this individual. They didn't seem zombified. They grabbed your weapon and they ran away. As we play these characters in the Pentagon, throughout the map, as we progress through the map, we find ourselves going to an elevator to the war room. DEFCON 5, DEFCON 4, all that stuff. The elevator can take us another level below that. The lab rooms, the lab floors. This is where we learn about monkeys that were experimented on with element 115, recovered from research when the Allies defeated the Axis powers during World War II. Research recovered from Group 935, as well as from converting some German scientists to the Allies' side. Power is power, no matter how way you see it. It was the Cold War after all, so they tried their hand at experimentation as well. This also led to more development of the Perca-Cola machines, all these weapons, the Pack-a-Punch machine, an upgrading machine to upgrade your weapons, all based on the original German designs, which explains why those are still here as well. That's what we learned in 5. The next map to release on the first DLC map pack, Ascension. This one takes place November 6th, 1963. This map was called Ascension. You'll note it's the exact same date. This map happens concurrently with 5. This is where we pick back up with those 4 characters from Kino, Darius, Shinonuma. Ascension takes place at Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kizilorda, Soviet Union. A cosmodrome, a Russian cosmodrome. Cold War, race to the moon, all that stuff. They find more tested on monkeys for space. Through this Easter egg, this is the first true Easter egg of Black Ops. And the first true Easter egg that really gave us more substance in the Easter egg itself. We learned through this Easter egg that there was a scientist called Dr. Gersh who was trapped inside this parallel dimension, this pocket dimension. Because in the map, we learn about this, we get this new equipment, the Gersh device, named after Dr. Gersh, where you toss it and you create a literal black hole to suck in those zombies. Dr. Gersh was sucked into that black hole and was contacting those 4 to help him be released from there. In Ascension, it is a rocket facility and there are lunar landers for testing lunar landers on the moon. So they would use those to get around the map. Aside from that, there isn't too much more to the story in Ascension aside from this is where the characters take that, what did I call it again? The platform, the moon platforms, the lunar platforms, and they rode it all the way to somewhere else. That's how that map ends. The next map, the second map to come out, this one happens April 25th, 1956. Shangri-La. Backtracking. And it's still with those same 4 characters, but they didn't arrive there from Ascension. They'd arrived there from somewhere else. Now we're starting to see, for the first time, the true the non-chronological release of these maps. It's the same 4 characters from Ascension, Kino, Darius, Shinonuma. But it's in the year 1956 when the previous map was in 1963. What we learned is that these characters are here because Dr. Richtofen is looking for something called the Golden Rod. A device that he said would be used to for immense power. To what end? Not revealed at the time. Shangri-La takes place in the middle of a jungle. Basically based off of a paradise. The Easter egg in this map is one of the most interesting. This map is similar to Skyward Sword in that you are going back and forth through time to complete the Easter egg. You are trying to help release 2 other explorers that had gotten trapped in Shangri-La in their own time loop. Every time they try to escape, they never truly do. They simply find themselves back at the beginning when they first arrived there. And the 4 characters try to help break that loop, eventually gaining the, not the golden rod this time, as Dr. Richtofen was looking for, but instead something called the focusing stone. Stone that also would be used to help create the golden rod. They're successful, they help release those 2 from their time loop, and they move on. Next map. Oh, I skipped one. Call of the Dead. Now, this one happens. I'm gonna skip a bit. March 10th, 2011.
Holy shit. They're zooming.
Call of the Dead. When this map first released, it seemed like it didn't have anything to do with the zombies storyline because the 4 playable characters, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Michael Rooker, Danny Trejo, and I'm forgetting his name, the guy who played Freddy Krueger. The cutscene for this is the 4 of them are shooting a movie, a film, fighting zombies, directed by George A. Romero. Now the cutscene starts with them cutting, they miss their line, they miss a hit. Then an actual zombie makes an appearance, attacking the set, the crew, and stealing George Romero for some reason. And the four actors have to defend themselves. Call of the Dead takes place in Siberia, Russia. George Romero being George Romero, he wanted to shoot his zombie film at an old German research facility. Another research facility by Group 935. It's in this map where we actually find the golden rod. The 4 characters from Shangri-La and Ascension, they do make an appearance on this map, but not as playable characters. Instead, they are locked behind some doors. Similar to Shangri-La, these 4 playable characters, the actors, help the 4 main cast, the 4 main characters, escape. They forge the golden rod, and the other 4 leave, leaving the 4 actors behind. That's all the story there is for the actors, but for the 4 main characters in Ascension, Shangri-La, Kino, Derice, Shino, they are help released and collect the golden rod to move on with whatever Dr. Richtofen has planned. Now, finally, the final map. This one is a little tricky to place, but I'll go with the one that makes the most sense. October 12th, 2025. Moon. The 4 characters we are familiar with find themselves starting off the map at Area 51 with a giant teleporting pad. Normally they're about 6 feet in diameter. This one was around 20 feet in diameter. After taking that teleporting pad, it teleports them to the moon base that Dr. Richtofen had established back in World War II in the 1940s. They put on some spacesuits, and they fight zombies on the moon. Before we move on to the Easter egg for this map, some of the collectibles that reveal the lore here, we learn why the moon is haunted now. You see, when Dr. Richtofen had hit the button on the teleporter with Dr. Maxis and Samantha inside of the teleporter with Fluffy, that's the name of the dog, Samantha was teleported to the moon base, close to the MPD, to the pyramid. When she touched it, she was sealed inside of it, in a way. And this is where we learn that Samantha has been controlling the zombies ever since she got sent there. Dr. Maxis was sent somewhere else. Don't know where. Whole bunch of research then completed at the moon. On the moon itself, there isn't that much, but it's what happens back on Earth. You see, throughout this Easter egg, Dr. Richtofen is trying to figure out a way to switch souls with Samantha so that he can gain control of the zombies. He is successful, and successfully kicks Samantha out of the MPD, puts his soul into the MPD. But during the process, they also nuke the Earth. Question.
Which part?
Yes.
All?
The last part of the Easter egg shows multiple nuclear missiles. Now, for the sake of the graphics and the actual in-game engine, it was only 3 missiles being sent. But nuclear missiles were sent to hit all over Earth. From the moon.
Okay.
Essentially, not fully destroying Earth, but not much to return to, even if the characters wanted to. With the Earth raised by the nukes, the Area 51 teleporting device that they'd used to get there destroyed, the 3 characters, Takeo Masaki, Nikolai Belinsky, Tank Dempsey, stuck on the moon. And Dr. Maxis now has control of these zombies, and we know this because the zombies' eyes colors change from yellow to blue.
I thought, what's his name, Dr. Richter?
Richtofen.
I thought Dr. Richter could switch this, right?
Yes. Did I say?
Maxis.
My bad.
Okay,
Richtofen.
I'm
Yes.
sure.
Dr. Richtofen. That is the end of Black Ops. Call of Duty Black Ops.
Oh my god! I can't believe that was just Black Ops.
We have 3 more games. There's Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3, and Black Ops 4. All part of this storyline. At this point that these 4 characters, these 4 original main characters would soon earn the name Ultimus. Go ahead.
So quick question. So let's say you had a 4-player game on the moon, and then Richtofen becomes like the new control of the zombies. What happens to the 4th player, or whatever player that was controlling?
No, that's part of the story.
If I remember correctly, I think the game ends.
Oh, okay. And so you win, but then like if you tried again, let's say you replay it.
Yeah.
And then you go back.
Oh, so you just go back. So you just keep doing it.
You're starting, yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought it was like
This
an
is
game.
actually
This
explained.
is still a survival game, right?
Yes. And that concept of restarting from fresh is explained.
Oh, okay.
Oh, God damn.
Game mechanics are explained through the story. Not yet, though.
Everyone loves Dark Souls.
Question.
I actually do have another question. I forgot to ask earlier. So, especially with stuff like 5 and like the movie set and everything, are zombie outbreaks, are these like isolated incidents
For the most part, yes.
that aren't like well aware of?
Yes. Now, before official timeline stuff was released, the fans speculated, especially at this point, that once we learned that Samantha was controlling the zombies, specifically targeting Dr. Richtofen and, by association, the other 3, Samantha was only interested in trying to kill Dr. Richtofen. Then why were they at 5?
that makes more sense.
Why were they at 5 if it was 4 politicians and not the Ultimus crew? Now, these 4, just as a quick side note, we learn at this point that these 4 characters that make up the Ultimus crew are around their 40s, 30s to 40s, during the 1940s, during World War II. Going into Black Ops 2, the Zombies storyline, the Zombies game mode has exploded. People were hype. The next Call of Duty, the next Black Ops game, the next Treyarch game had to have zombies in it. It seemed like the end of the story at that point, and it would be. It could be a good point to the story, but there are clearly a lot of holes in this story that don't make sense. Going into Black Ops 2, this game launched with 2 maps, technically 5, because one of them was an extremely large map that you could play individual smaller pieces of that map. We'll just call it 1. This first map was called Green Run or Transit with a Z. This map takes place, and I'll put this over here, October 21st, 2035. So that's that one, and then this one was Transit. Location, Hanford, Washington, United States of America. 10 years after the Earth is nuked. We find ourselves with a completely new crew we call the Victus crew. The characters of the Victus crew introduce Samuel J. Stuhlinger, Marlton Johnson, Abigail Misty Brierton, and someone only by the name Russman. 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 No last name. Maybe that is his last name. Just one name. Like Cher or Bono. Now these 4 find themselves on an extremely ravaged Earth. Lava everywhere. The city destroyed. The map itself was not very well received. There were a lot of mechanics introduced in this specific map that made it a pain to play. But story-wise, we learned that these 4 characters are just simply 4 that had unfortunate souls that had found themselves trying to survive after the destruction of the Earth caused by the Ultimus crew in 2025. The Transit crew were traveling around this small town, Green Run. And there they find another research facility hidden underground of I think it was a farm, we'll call it a farm. In there, as a very common mechanic of all Zombies games, you have to turn on the power to gain access to other stuff. When they turn on the power at this place, they unknowingly unleash this creature, humanoid creature completely consisting of electricity, dubbed the Avogadro. This creature seemed to have been contained in that facility, and when they turned on the power, they accidentally released it. Kept in that research facility. Now, this was in the United States, so this was not a facility for Group 935. Instead, it was a research facility for a new group called the Broken Arrow organization. We learned that the Broken Arrow organization was an organization developed by the United States after they learned about Group 935 around the Cold War era, where they had taken those old research notes and developments for themselves for the Broken Arrow organization. Once again, explaining why there's the pack-a-punch machines, perk machines, all the same stuff. It's all just reverse engineered stuff from old research. Eventually, in this map, a main mechanic of the map as well is you travel around the map in a bus, an automated bus driven by a robot. This bus takes them to their next location. The next map in Black Ops 2. But before that, we have to talk about the second map that had released with Black Ops 2. For those of you who might be familiar with the Treyarch games, there's a very, very, very popular multiplayer map called Nuketown. Tiny map, very popular. Now it is in Zombies. This one takes place October 13th, 2025. This one is just Nuketown Zombies. That is exactly what happened. And this time, the characters we play are members of the CIA or the CDC. Similar to at the very beginning, unnamed characters. You're just generic CIA or CDC characters. He is first.
Which one is it? There are two different organizations. CDC or the CIA?
Yes.
Wait, what?
You said that one was where we get a little bit randomness in your playable characters. When you spawn in, you're spawning in as either a CIA agent in a suit or a CDC in a full hazmat suit.
A fucking nerd in a hazmat suit. We just picked up a gun.
You spawn as one or the other.
Crazy.
They are both involved with the Nuketown. Now, Nuketown, for those of you who might be familiar with the Nuketown as the multiplayer map, it's nothing more than just a testing site for nuclear bombs, testing fallout, stuff like that. So obviously the Americans are very involved in that. Marlton, one of the members of the new Victus crew we meet in transit, had been sent there to study stuff, help with research. He was truly the nerd of the group. Very stereotypically nerdy. Thin, lanky, huge ass glasses, nasally voice. Chad just looks at you. He's not wearing his glasses. He's wearing his contacts. Now, in one of the corners of this map, we find a bunker where Marlton is hiding in. Every once in a while, you'll hear Marlton's voice inside there. The map itself does not give any lore aside from the fact that this map exists. And at the very end of the game, once you die eventually, you are met with not truly a cutscene. It happens in the background as it shows you the score. The image of nukes falling from the sky. Presumably from, oh yeah, and my bad. So since this is the 13th, it's not the same nukes from here. It's still a nuclear testing site. Nuketown has already been very much destroyed when you spawn into the map. From RIP, it's already destroyed from the events of Moon. For some reason, people are still around and still testing nuclear fallout, nuclear tests on it. Marlton still survives though, and he eventually meets up with the transit crew in 2035. With the Victus crew, my bad, in transit. Yes. Marlton. The names for these new characters aren't very recognizable, they're not very memorable. But they do have names, correct?
Can we just call him Milton?
Sure, Milton. We'll call him Milton. Now, the first map pack to come out from this also takes place in the year 2035. This one takes place October 22nd, 2035. This one is called Die Rise, my bad. A pun on high rise. This map takes place in Shanghai, China, with the Victus crew from Transit. Correct. How did they get all the way from the United States to China in a completely raisin Earth? Well, we learn there that I believe his name was. That shows you how memorable they are. I don't even remember all their names. Samuel Stuhlinger, cargo shorts dude, as everyone remembers him. We learned that he's in the intro cutscene for this map, which isn't really a cutscene. It's more like animated comic book style-esque, and voiced over. We learned that there's someone talking to him in his head, similar to Dr. Richtofen. This voice we don't know what the voice is saying, but by the way Sam reacts, it seems like he's got something to hide from the rest of the crew, that he's eaten from the flesh. And so we learn that this voice has been leading them to these places in Transit and in Die Rise. Go ahead.
Here's a quick question. Do the zombies in the 2035 year, do they have blue eyes?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Go ahead.
How's Tank? Is he alright?
It's been 10 years since we last saw them on the moon.
I think he's got a cool name. I really like
We don't know yet. Remember, we're going through the story as the maps came out. We might learn what happened to him, we might not.
Tank seems like
Tank Dempsey. He's a tough son of a bitch. He's an American from World War II.
tough son of a bitch. He's the Chad that carried that
Hoorah, motherfuckers!
micro gun into a teleporter for no apparent reason. And
No, well, he was trying to defend himself, shooting
but it
an
was-
electric-based weapon
but he's
while in a
American.
teleporter.
He doesn't need to
He's not the
back.
smartest cookie,
He's
but by God is he tough as shit.
he,
So they find out in Die Rise that this entity that's speaking to Sam, has the ability to teleport them from the United States to Shanghai, China, in these high-rise buildings. I did forget that the Easter egg for Transit ends up with them trying to build something they called a pylon. Something that supposedly the voice was telling Sam to build as a way to help them fix the Earth, or to fix things in general.
which one was Sam again? One of the transit gangs?
Yes, one of the transit.
The girl?
That is the cargo shorts dude.
Oh, that's
Voice in his head.
I thought you said cargo short suit was part of High Rise game.
They're both the same gang.
Oh, it's never mind. Keep going.
It's still on. You cannot construct additional pylons.
Can I construct additional pylons?
Andres was upset about the pylons.
That's what they called them. That's what the voice in his head told him.
I'm the main reference. That's all I know.
I don't know the reference, so.
I don't either. I know the code.
So this entity that was speaking to Sam in his head had the ability to teleport the Victus crew from Transit in the United States, Maryland, USA, to Shanghai, China. Once again, they are tasked with building another pylon on one of the roofs of this building. Of course, with the supposed goal of fixing everything, or saving them in general. Aside from that, there's not much more lore or story aside from that. Now the next map. I am going to switch colors for this.
It's blue. It's only for Rick. I still think that. I think Rick.
December 31st,
We're back in Hitler days.
1939. 33.
Activision wasn't a coward. They just gave us the
Mob of the Dead. The trailer for this one is strange. We are now in Alcatraz, following 4 characters: Albert Arlington, Billy Handsome, Michael O'Leary, and Salvatore De Luca. 4 mobsters from the Prohibition era. Go ahead.
Did you guys know that Alcatraz means Pelican?
Where's the question?
I thought I was just raising my hand for the time.
Now, the reason this one I put in blue is because we are not on the same timeline anymore. Now, it's not fair to say that we're not on the same timeline anymore because in this map, with these 4 mobsters, in the intro cutscene, it seems like it's a normal Alcatraz. Then the jail begins to morph into this hellish, demonic hellscape. The zombies are obviously look like prisoners, barbed wire, spikes coming out of them. These 4 characters find themselves trying to fend off the zombie hordes. And in that same intro cutscene, we see one by one all of them succumb to the zombie hordes during the intro cutscene. So when you spawn into the map, you are not exactly spawning in as them, but as their ghosts. And you spawn in as their ghosts until eventually you find your character's body and you re-enter your body. This introduces us an exclusive mechanic to this game, to this map, where you are able to electrocute yourself, to kill yourself, enter your ghost form, do things you can only do on the ghost plane, then re-enter your body. Go ahead.
Can the zombies attack you as a ghost?
No.
Seems kind of broken.
It is, there is a time limit on it.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
at this time. So far, the zombie story has been going along, and then we find ourselves in Alcatraz with 4 mobsters. People chalk it up to just being very similar to just Call of the Dead. It's just another Call of the Dead where it just seems like random celebrities. Go ahead.
So, what color are the zombies' eyes in that map?
Good question. Orange.
I was gonna say orange. What does it mean?
Actually, no, they're red. I was wrong. They're red.
Wait, red.
I bet
So
it's
is it-
They are red. With these 4 characters, as we play through this map and the collectibles and the Easter egg, the Easter egg requires them, or we follow their plan to escape Alcatraz. They're trying to build an airplane to escape the island.
as one does.
Now, when they do, a mini boss in this map is one called the Warden. This large, hulking individual dressed up like the Warden that keeps trying to take them down. Now, throughout the game, you are trying to build this airplane so you can try and escape. Now, this isn't part of the Easter egg. This is just part of the game itself, part of the setup. When you successfully build the airplane and you ride it, you instead crash onto the Golden Gate Bridge, where you find the Pack-a-Punch machine.
For what?
The Pack-a-Punch machine, the upgrade machine, the weapon upgrade machine, basically.
Sorry, I thought that was the we haven't seen
The same on the Golden Gate Bridge, a Pack-a-Punch machine, developed by Nazis in 1945. So, we learned through the Easter egg now that these 4 characters, one of them had originally had a plan to build this plane and escape Alcatraz. But thinking the plan was absolute bullshit, the other three had decided to kill the fourth one. And so those three received the death sentence and were electrocuted to death, clearly.
This is the alt, not on the plane?
Huh?
I didn't do the question right, I'm sorry.
He has a demerit for tomorrow.
That's fair.
Go ahead.
Alright, so in the canon ending of this mission, you fly off and you find the plane. Then you land on Golden Gate Bridge.
You see, that's not truly the ending of the map. That's just part of the gameplay in of itself. You can loop that over. Because you
Was it
see,
an alternate thing where they killed the Golden Gate Bridge?
no.
Or were they after they landed on the bridge?
Here's if you haven't played the game, this map, it is confusing.
That's fair.
So, to try and explain this a little bit better, in Zombies, there is just the game setup where you find equipment, build things to build yourself up, upgrade yourself to survive as long as you can. Then there's the Easter egg. Sometimes some of the setup is required to do certain steps on the Easter egg, but not always. The airplane is simply set up to reach the Pack-a-Punch machine. In order to get back to Alcatraz to play the rest of the map, the characters have to go to these 4 electric chairs set up on the Golden Gate Bridge, electrocute themselves, and they are put back into the prison. How does that work? This is where the Easter egg actually comes into play. So the airplane is part of it, of the setup to help you get to the Golden Gate Bridge and all that. But during the Easter egg, we learn that what actually happened is that, I believe it was Albert Arlington. His idea was to build a plane and have the other 4, him with the other 3, escape Alcatraz. The other 3 called bullshit, thought it wasn't gonna work, so they killed him, for whatever reason. They're mobsters, in Prohibition era mobsters. I don't like your plan. We're all gonna stab you. So they get the death penalty for that. The other 3 are executed by electric chair. That is how they ended up on that map. You see, this is where we learn that those 4 find themselves in a sort of purgatory, where they are doomed or destined to repeat this cycle over and over and over and over again. During the Easter, we find that the person who's playing Albert, the one who was killed in real time, in the actual story, becomes the warden and has to try to kill the other 3 players. This is where we actually get 2 endings for the first time in Zombies. You get the Albert ending, where the person playing Albert successfully kills the other 3, and he gains his revenge. The cycle continues. The second ending, the other 3 kill Albert in his warden form. They're eventually overcome by zombies. They die. Cycle continues. No matter what happens, they're stuck in this purgatory forever. That's Mob of the Dead. Now, I also put it in another color, not just because it's in its own literal purgatory, not on the actual timeline, but it happens on a separate timeline as well, but we don't learn this until later on. The next map to come out for Black Ops 2, second to last map. Now we're back onto the main timeline. Running out of space over here. I'll put it over here. December 31st, 2035. Buried. December 30th, there's a few months after Die Rise, same year. We're back to the Victus crew from Transit and Die Rise. We are now we find ourselves in Angola, Africa, in a western town from the United States. Hidden, buried underground. Very strange map going into it. No intro cutscene. But instead, we find ourselves with the Victus crew in this map in Angola, Africa. Once again, teleported by the voice in Samuel's head to construct the third and final pylon. In this map, you start off in what looks like a mining site, and you go down into the mines, and you are in a western town from the old West times, underground in Africa. In there we find a couple of things on the map, a couple of mechanics that also are important to the story, that are seemingly random, but become very important to the story later on. We find this hulking mass of a man, just really tall dude, who, as a mechanic of the game, you feed him beer, he charges, and busts open a new playable area. Give him candy, he'll defend a zombie so he doesn't die, some certain stuff. His name is Arthur. Doesn't really speak much. He's very basic. He's a lug. Huh? Basically, he's Unga Bunga. As part of the map, we find, or we see a large kind of manor, inside of which we see a spirit inside of. The spirit of some woman lurking around in the house. Now you have to go through this house to reach the Pack-a-Punch machine on the other side, where there's a hedge maze, a maze of bushes and hedges. Through collectibles on the map, we learn that this spirit belongs to the mother of some, not only lived in this town, but was the mother of someone who in this town was responsible for the first person to create the Pack-a-Punch machine, Coca-Cola machines. You see, we learned that that this town was somehow transported from the United States in old Western times to underground Angola, Africa. Don't know how. Don't know why. Yet. But somehow it's teleported there, and we hear the recordings and audio logs of a man who had also been hearing voices. Hearing voices after the mining town had uncovered some strange glowing rocks. We now know these rocks are element 115. Similar to Dr. Richtofen, he started to hear voices as well. And these voices were telling him giving him instructions to how to build the Pack-a-Punch machine, Coca-Cola machines, other devices. This is where we learned that the Nazis in their Ries in Group 935, not Nazis, the Germans in Group 935 had uncovered the old research information from the guy in Buried. So it wasn't the Germans who had originally developed it. They reverse engineered it from this guy. During the Easter egg, they assembled a pylon, and this is where we learn that the voice inside Samuel's head was Richtofen. Because what had happened was, when he replaced Samantha as the controller of the zombies, it wasn't a complete process. He didn't have full control. He was in this place we called the ether. Dr. Maxus was also in the ether and was fighting Dr. Richtofen for total control of the zombies. Go ahead.
Where's Fluffy?
Still hellhounds. Most of these maps have hellhounds. Every like
Fluffy
5
got
rounds or so.
teleported too.
Huh?
Fluffy's just hanging out in the ether as a fucked up hellhound.
Yeah, so like the thing is, like, the hellhounds come in and try to attack you every couple of rounds.
Are they all Fluffy?
That's the idea. And oh yeah, so the reason why they're not all fluffy is a little tidbit from Duries, from the Raiders and Duries, is that when Maxis gifts Fluffy to Samantha, he mentions that she's going to have puppies soon. So she's likely pregnant at the time that she got turned into a hellhound, which would explain why they just constantly spawn all the time. So when the pylon is completed, we learned that it was so that Dr. Richtofen could take full control of the zombies. Once again, we're met with two different endings. You either complete it for Dr. Richtofen, or you complete it for Dr. Maxis. If you complete it for Dr. Richtofen, he takes full control of the zombies. He basically erases Dr. Maxis, and that's the end of the story. Second ending, if they do it for Dr. Maxis usurps Dr. Richtofen and essentially still leaves the other four to basically just die. Neither ending is really good. Or my bad. If they do with Dr. Richtofen, zombies will still kill the Victus crew. But with Dr. Maxis, he doesn't. But there's still zombies around. It's still a hellscape. Go ahead.
If Dr. Maxis gets the zombies, do their eye colors change?
Yes, but I don't remember what color they were, because it was just like just for the ending of that until you died. So it looks like that might be the end of the zombies storyline. Either Richtofen is fully successful in gaining control of the zombies, or Dr. Maxis considered. Another thing about Dr. Maxis' ending is he doesn't just kick out Edward from the ether, but instead he puts the Dr. Richtofen's soul into a zombie to wander the earth undead forever. That is the end of Black Ops 2. Oh, my bad. There's actually one more. So I'm going to actually put this one over here because it's a purgatory. June 4th, 1918.
Oh my god!
Buried. I'm not that buried. I was looking at the wrong one.
I was ready. So it's going to be buried again.
Origins. Everyone knows it's the final map of the season for Black Ops 2. Are we going to tie up loose ends? Is it going to finalize the story of what happens with the Victus crew? What happened to the Ultimus crew on the moon? We find ourselves with promotional images revealing similar to the Ultimus crew, but they're younger. How would they know each other if they were younger? They look like they're in their mid-20s. According to World at War and Black Ops, the other four characters didn't know each other until Shinonuma in their 40s, in the 1940s. This time they're in their 20s, and they know each other. Intro cutscene for Buried. We hear a little girl's voice narrating the intro. Group 935 during World War I, that was originally started in World War II in the main timeline, was excavating some rocks in excavation site 64 in France. This time the rocks are blue instead of red, like on the main timeline. This is also another clue for how we know this is an alternate timeline. Younger Ultimus, blue element 115. We see zombies breaking out of the excavation sites, not turning the soldiers that are there, but instead being uncovered. And the zombies, some of them look like they're wearing knight garb, medieval garb. So it seems like these zombies had been there since at least the medieval times. Whereas before, in the main timeline, zombies didn't begin until World War II, when Group 935 had created them during their teleportation tests. Mob of the Dead. We slowly introduce the 4 characters, action scenes coming in, Takeo with his samurai sword, Tank Dempsey riding a tank, an actual Tank Dempsey on a tank, Nikolai with a shotgun, and they go into this room where they walk into Dr. Richtofen, seemingly holding a saw. Now this isn't directly the focus of the shot, it's off onto the bottom or to the sides. He has a saw that he's putting down, and you can see when he turns around, you see behind them on the table an open head, cut open, without a brain. The brain is missing, there's just an empty hole there. He turns around and looks at the other characters. They look up, a giant robot, the foot from that pole to this pole, is about to step on them.
From outside?
From outside. Cut to black, map starts. In this map is very, very new stuff. We're in this excavation site. Through lore and through the Easter egg, through collectibles and the Easter egg, we learn that these 4 characters had just met each other on that map. Dr. Max, and as part of the setup, you can find Dr. Maxis's brain and put it in a drone to help you shoot zombies. It was Dr. Maxis that was on that table. Dr. Ludwig Maxis, seemingly an older version. He seemed about the same age as Dr. Maxis in the main timeline, yet Dr. Richtofen is younger in this new one. More clues confirming that it is a new timeline.
So this is where we find out his first name is Luke?
Yes.
Okay, because you had...
Yeah, I mentioned it before. Because before it was just Dr. Maxis. Now it's Dr. Ludwig Maxis. Or was that? Oh yeah. Through the Easter egg, we'll go through the collectibles first. We learned that Dr. Maxis was infected by a zombie, and before he was fully turned, Richtofen took it upon himself to cut out his brain and put him in a drone to preserve him in some form or fashion. We learn about these new zombies dubbed the Templar zombies, the one with the medieval garbs with these strange cross-like insignias on front of them, likely from the Crusades, it looked like. As well as these giant mechanized robots. As a frame of reference, the foot would be about from this pole to the 3rd pole. Just the foot.
Okay. We're talking Iron Giant.
Basically, Iron Giant size. That walk across the map, you can avoid them. You can go inside them if you find the right foot. But that's for parts of the Easter egg. So during the Easter egg, and through lore, the Easter egg this time, we hear a voice, a little girl's voice, directing us or helping us on what to do. We must go to the crazy place and forge or reforge the elemental staves. You see, in this excavation site, Dr. Maxis had uncovered the schematics for these 4 staffs, elemental staffs, one for ice, one for fire, one for electricity, and one for thunder, basically. Now, they had started rebuilding them, so these are not the original ones. These are rebuilt. These are new ones that are not truly intended to be the full power of the original ones. In the map, in the main excavation area, we go down into a tunnel where we see 4 statues with the same medieval garb of the Templar zombies, and their faces look just like the 4 playable characters. These 4 characters we now we now call them the premise crew, to distinguish them from the Ultimus crew. Ancient statues uncovered with their faces on them, wielding these staffs. They rebuild the staffs during the Easter egg. You can upgrade them. You have to upgrade them for the Easter egg. They're very powerful. They're fun to use. And eventually, once you complete the Easter egg, you meet up at the center of the map, and a massive column of energy forms, in kind of like a cyclone, and you are lifted up into the sky. The cutscene starts with you, the screen getting brighter, and zooms out from a little girl's eye, Samantha. She's in a house, and she's talking about these four heroes who are successful in their adventure. She's playing with toys. We see zombies from Mob of the Dead. We see the four characters. We see the Ultimus crew as toys. We see another boy in the room as well. She calls him Eddie. And so we hear from off camera another voice calling out to them, for the children to come. And she says, "Come on, Eddie. My daddy says that that they are arriving." That's the end of the cutscene.
Fuck.
The implications of the toys pissed off so many people in the zombies community. The implication was that the entirety of what we've played has been nothing but a child's fucking game. All in her imagination. Richtofen was just her version of Eddie, the little boy with her. That was it. No explanation for buried ending. No explanation for all these missing pieces.
That's the end of the game.
That's the end of the game with the new timeline. What's worse is the next Call of Duty game will not come out for 2 years this time instead of 1. This is where they transitioned to a 3-year cycle, where now Sledgehammer, which was a development studio that originally helped Infinity Ward with the Modern Warfare series, they wanted to make their own Call of Duty games. So like, all right, now we got 3 studios, we'll cycle through those 3. So, 2015, Black Ops 3. Obviously, they have to bring back zombies. They couldn't just leave it off the way it did. Now, of course, they confirmed that zombies would be returning with the same, continuing the story. So they thought, okay, maybe this is a reboot. Nothing else happened. This is maybe a reboot. Younger versions of the characters. It's the 1910s or almost 1920s, World War I. Maybe it's a reboot. Maybe it's a new story. We start off with the first map that Black Ops 3 starts off with. Now this time it launches with 1 map and an optional second map if you pre-order. A pre-order bonus. A lot of people didn't like that, but that's how it went. The main map that came out with it, Shadows of Evil, the first map. This one is in the year, I'll put it over here. April 25th, 1944. Shadows Evil. It's around this time, oh no, it was around Origins, where the head of the zombie studio had changed. I don't remember who the name of the first guy, but now it moved on to Jason Blundell. So clearly there was a change in the story and the direction. And we saw that displayed much, much more in Shadows of Evil. Location, Morgue City in the United States, a fictional city in this new timeline. Once again, they bring back more celebrities to play these new characters. Now they're not celebrities playing themselves; they're celebrities playing new characters. Floyd Campbell, Jessica Rose, Nero Blackstone, and Jack Vincent. A crooked cop, a what are they called? A flapper. The dancing ladies from the 40s. With the very sparkly dresses. The showgirls. Basically, yeah. A failing magician. And a boxer who had just killed someone in his boxing match for wearing knuckle dusters under his gloves. All of them had done something wrong. The flapper girl killed someone, stabbing them with a pair of scissors. Crooked cop. Nero Blackstone killed his assistant for insurance money during a rehearsal gone wrong. The intro cutscene shows them doing their stuff. Then they somehow find themselves, this isn't really truly explained, they're not shown that they die in the cutscene, but they find themselves in this pseudo-transformed version of their own city. It's very 1940s, it's very steampunk-ish, for whatever reason. It's not super steampunk, but it has that kind of feel to it. The now last gen, the next gen of consoles will come out, so things look nicer, there's more atmosphere, there's more volumetric focus, so it gives it that steampunk feel. We learn about these characters that they are here in for a very similar reason that the Mob of the Dead crew were in their situation. They are atoning for their sins, supposedly, and are stuck in this kind of purgatory, except they're not really in a time loop. You see, this one actually has a sort of end to it. When we play this map, we learn, through the collectibles, we learn about the cast of the characters, but that's the only time we see them. So that's not really important for the story. Instead, what's more important is the actual Easter egg and what happens at the completion of the Easter egg. Throughout the Easter egg, they're tasked with building a spherical device called the summoning key. This key, along with a book called the Chronorium, that supposedly told the story of everything that has ever happened and ever will happen. Essentially, it's the book of the Zombies timeline. All the timelines. As they go through the Easter egg, we find these new entities. The Keepers. They look demonic, creepy, massive teeth, but they're wearing robes, hooded robes. At one point in the Easter egg, when it seems like you've completed it, what you've done instead is you've unleashed this Cthulhu-looking creature in the sky, tentacles coming out of this massive portal in the sky. To fully complete the Easter egg, you have to try to defeat it by completing the construction of the summoning key to get rid of it. As soon as you finish that, the Keeper is handing it to you. It's floating, it's about to hand it to you. Hand comes off from off screen, plucks it away from them. It's Dr. Richtofen from Origins. There's a portal behind him. It says, "I'm terribly sorry, but thank you for building this for me, but I have a job to do." Bamps out, strands those poor people there to die, I guess. Richtofen is there. He makes that appearance at the ending and takes the summoning key. That is Shadows of Evil, by and large. Now the second map that you get from the pre-order bonus. This one happens I'll use this one because it's related, but use a slightly different color. Close to here. That looks pink. October 13th, 1945. The Giants. Der Riese is German for the Giants. Now this one is where things really start to get fucky. The intro cutscene shows the Primus crew from Buried. 3 of them, Takeo, Nikolai, and Tank. And they're at the Der Riese facility. In October 13. Now, through the time logs, we know that the audio logs and the radios, we know that this is the exact date that Dr. Richtofen hit the teleporter to send away Maxis and Samantha. Now, I would have put it closer, but I wanted to separate those dates. So, the 3 of them are fighting off zombies, and they find Ultimus Richtofen, the older Richtofen from the main timeline. They're essentially on the main timeline, somehow, in this intro cutscene. The 3 of them try to go ahead.
Which Dr. Richardson from the main timeline? Is this
The
all
original
way-
one, the
The
Ultimus,
145?
the one in 45.
Not the one that has transcended humanity.
Correct.
Okay.
They're talking to him. The 3 Sans Richtofen from Origins are talking to Ultimus Richtofen on the main timeline. This will, and I'll get in just a moment why it's purple and just off of it. They're talking to Richtofen. He has just finished teleporting Maxis and Samantha. The teleporter's closed, and they find Richtofen and they tell him that he must release the test subjects and not open that teleporter. He opens the teleporter, and hidden in the fog, you see a figure, and the fog clears. It's Primus Richtofen. He looks back at himself, small squint in his eyes, walks down the steps, down to Ultimus Richtofen. Richtofen, seemingly proud, takes off his hat in his form of salutes, and Primus Richtofen shoots him in the face.
Classic Richardson.
Classic Richtofen. Tank's line immediately after is, "Damn it, Richtofen, I thought we were done with this." Richtofen seemingly kneels down to Richtofen's body, does something with it. And so the 4 of them are trying to survive in the Der Riese facility. The original Easter egg is still there that you can still complete, although the reward's a little bit different. But story-wise, there isn't much else. Later on down the line, we learn that since they have killed Richtofen, before he finds the other 3 in the main timeline, they've created a fracture in the timeline. Not a split, a fracture in the timeline. We call this one the Deceptio, the Deceptio fracture. This fracture will send ripples through space and time, and not just this timeline, but in other timelines that will start fucking things up. Since they fucked up that, Richtofen never finds will seemingly not find the other 3 and start this timeline. So what happens after that? The next map, Der Eisendrache. This one takes place still in 1945, but now we're in November 5th, 1945, Der Eisendrache. Long name. Forget what Dice and Drop means. I think something having to do with a dragon. The dragon's head or something like that. Once again, go ahead.
Before we move on to this next map, at the end of the giant, not the new one, had the entire Primus game come to this fractured timeline?
Yes.
Those are all four of them from
So
Origin.
they're on the main timeline,
Yes.
but it's fucked up now.
Yeah, but it's fucked up. But all of the Primus game from Origins is there.
Yes.
3 of them were there, and then
And Richter Finn showed up on that teleporter.
came separately for dramatic effect.
Seemingly.
Okay.
We don't know that. We don't know why. Or why he came separately or why he was in the teleporter at the time. So this timeline is fucked up. Seemingly, it seems like this should never happen. So the main timeline, so it doesn't create an alternate timeline, not really. It instead creates a fractured timeline where yes, things are different, but it doesn't create a new timeline. So Richtofen does not find the other three rather, because he's killed. And the other test subjects we now learn were Takeo, Nikolai, and Tank. The test subjects were kept in a Siberian facility, the same facility that Call of the Dead happens at. Well, Call of the Dead, the map happens in 2011, but the research facility in Siberia was originally started in the 40s during World War II. But they were kept there. So Richtofen had released them 3 as help during the zombie outbreak to go to Shinonuma, collect his diary, go on to Duriz. Tank fucked things up by shooting the Wunderwaffe inside the teleporter, while inside the teleporter. Started the whole thing off. So now the test subjects were not being found, and so Dr. Groff, who's on the moon, because Dr. Richtofen was working with him on the moon facility, behind Dr. Max's back. Go ahead.
Dr. Groff is the black hole guy, right?
Is what?
The black hole guy?
That's
Is it Dr.
Gersh.
Gersh?
That's Gersh.
Gersh.
Yeah.
Who's Dr. Groff?
Dr. Groff was an associate of Dr. Richtofen's that he worked with behind Dr. Max's back to keep working on the teleporter stuff, and was also helping him with the secret moon base. So Dr. Groff is on the moon at this time. Tries to contact Dr. Richtofen. Primus Richtofen tries to contact him as his alt self. Dr. Groff rolls high on his insight check, calls bullshit, so he stops the other test subjects from being sent to the Siberian facility. The one for Tank, though, was at Dreisenjak, and they were trying to find his body before it gets sent off somewhere else. So the cutscene for this one's kind of cool. They take a giant robot that for some reason was at the giant facility that was originally developed in the alternate timeline, was somehow developed in the main timeline in the 40s. They take that giant robot and go to Dreisenjak. Oh no, my bad. That's the intro for Gorodkovi, my bad. I mixed those up. So they go to Dreisenjak, which is a castle near Werfen, Austria. In this castle, we find another pyramid similar to the one at the moon. It's a little bigger, but it doesn't have the same kind of effects on the crew like it did for Dr. Richtofen. So they, with that pyramid, they use it to help them. They learned a couple of things through collectibles and setup and Easter egg stuff. To kind of summarize all of that, they learned that the Dreisenjak castle that the facility was established at. So the castle was there because it's a castle from medieval times. Group 935, that also exists on that still exists on the main timeline, had taken over that castle and established another research facility there. The castle belonged to a king from back then, and through some parts of the map you find paintings of this large, oversized man in overalls, just like the dude from Buried. Arthur had originally was a servant, not a servant, but was a very close to the king. That when this castle was originally built in medieval times, the king asked Arthur to spread his bones around the castle when he died, and that's part of constructing an elemental bow similar to the elemental staves in Origins. So we learned that Arthur was originally in the medieval times and somehow ended up in Buried. In addition, we learned that, what else? Oh yeah, that the reason they're trying to find Tank Dempsey's original body is they're trying to collect his soul with the summoning key that Dr. Richtofen had yoinked from the Shadows of Evil crew. He's going to use the souls to try and create a fresh start in a new dimension. With who knows, why, how, who knows. Go ahead.
I may be thinking about it too much. But why would Tank and gang go to Shinonuma and then to, because you said they still went to Gary's on October 28th and Tank fucked up the machine by electrococking it. But if they never met Dr. Richtofen, then they wouldn't have needed to go to Shinonuma to find this journal and then go to Dear Reese.
Oh, so here's the thing. Dr. Richtofen had, we learned later on that Dr. Richtofen had released those three, the other three, from the Siberian facility where Call of the Dead takes place. Then, with them, went to Shinonuma to collect his diary, and then went to Duriz.
Primus, Dr. Richtofen did this?
Ultimus.
I thought they
The original
they
ones.
killed him so that they never showed him, so that he never met them.
That's exactly where things get fucking up. They're fracturing the timeline now.
So he didn't meet them, but he also did meet them?
So they meet the Ultimus, the original Richtofen, kill him so that the rest of the stuff doesn't happen like it normally does. Instead of Richtofen going to find the other three, he's killed. And so instead of getting them from the Siberian facility, they are in other facilities. This fracturing of the timeline sends ripples, kind of butterfly effects. A bunch of things change.
I thought you had said that that stuff with the original Deriz still happened, right?
Yeah. So it kind of works on what was originally intended to be Terminator time travel rules, where if they change something in the past, it changes the outcomes. But not fully. It's happening like that because they fractured the timeline. The timeline is fractured, it's damaged. So it's in this kind of superposition where the both timelines existed, so like they couldn't go back if that never happened or what have you. But like here's the thing, it can still exist because the events of this timeline don't affect whether or not the events of this alternate timeline happen. They enter that timeline, fuck it up, and start creating new events. So everything that happened here, supposedly, or we can assume, none of this will happen after this. We've changed the timeline now. We don't know there were fractures at the time, but we know it seems like we've changed the timeline. So at the Dries and Jock facility, they find Tank's body, they take the soul, and they move on to the next place. My bad. Zetsubo no Shima. This one takes place okay. October 18th, 1945. Zetsubo no Shima. Another fracture, the prototone fracture. This time, so now they're able to go back in time now because Richtofen now has the summoning key, which allows them to travel across dimensions and timelines. Time and space, basically. So they collect the Dryzen Drug, and then they go to Zetsubo no Shima to collect Takeo's soul. This time, since Dr. Groff got that tip off that something happened to the original Richtofen, a lot of things changed, so Takeo is never sent to the Siberian facility. Instead, he's sent to another Japanese facility, Zetsubo no Shima. It's there that they find Takeo's body, take his soul. Well, not his body, but they take his soul. But not just his body, because they find that he has been strangely mutated through experiments. That's what, yeah. After various experiments done on him. They collect his soul. He commits seppuku, and then they collect his soul. They collect his soul. They move on to the next one. Now, the very end of this Easter egg, the way it ends, is it ends with them teleporting, but with a bit of an audio, with a sound bite of them speaking, with just the animation of them teleporting. The sound bites are of the crew talking to each other, what next? So that all of them. It is Richtofen saying, there's something we must do first. And we hear them teleport, and then we move on to the fourth map. This one happens November 6th, 1945. Gorod Karovi. In Stalingrad, in the USSR. Once again, another fracture. The fractures themselves, not only, we call them fractures because not only did they change the timeline, but since they fractured, they fucked up the very fabric of time, other things are changing. Rifts in space-time are opening. Various things change across space and time, not just things that happen after this, but things that happened before. One of those things is that Nikolai is never captured during the Battle of Stalingrad. Instead, he's still there, piloting this Russian kind of mech, fighting dragons.
Dragons?
A dragon. The dragons were supposedly uncovered in this new fractured timeline by the Russians, that they didn't make the dragons existed from before them. They just found the eggs and then grew it. Dragon. People like 2 minutes are like, now there's dragons. So that's a very important part. So I'll repeat one more time. Since they killed, from the very moment they killed Richtofen back here, they fractured the timeline. At the time, we thought they just changed the timeline, but now we're learning they fucked up the timeline. There's rifts opening in space-time. There's things changing, not just in the future that happened after that moment, but before that moment. Case in point. The cutscene opens, they're falling through the sky into Stalingrad. There's another body falling down. On the tag, it's a US Marine with the name Peter McCain. Peter McCain is the name of the hanging body in the Shinonuma facility.
Oh my god.
Peter McCain was originally supposed to parachute down into Shinonuma, was killed, and he died. It was never explained how he really died, if he got strangled by the ropes of his parachute, or if he got killed in the air, but his body was hanging there. This time, a rift opened, and Peter, instead of landing in Shinonuma, was instead finding his dead body, somehow also dead, which lends to the theory that he was shot in the air somehow. falling along with the four premise group as they're entering Gorod Krovi into Stalingrad. So they all, while they're falling, they all grab onto his body, pull the chute, and they all land. So, like I mentioned, things are changing in the timeline. They fucked up the timeline. Things are changing not just before, but after. So this time, instead of Nikolai being captured during the Battle of Stalingrad to be a test subject in the Siberian facility in the main timeline by Group 935, instead he is still in the Battle of Stalingrad, and he's piloting a Russian mech, fighting off a dragon.
Pretty fucking rad.
How are these dragons here? The Russians uncovered the eggs from that had existed, I guess, since forever. They just uncovered the eggs and just rehatched them. A dragon egg. Yeah. And this is the main timeline too.
Fucking crazy.
It's getting real fucky now, isn't it? During this map is where we get a lot of explanations, which still lead to more questions. During the Easter egg, we hear another voice talking to us. This voice calls himself Dr. Monty. He says that we've fucked up so much. Not only have you broken space, you've broken time. Now you gotta help you fix it. I will help you fix it. I've taken notice of you now, so I've gone through the entirety of time and helped you out in the future, now, and back then, and all versions of you. It seems like Dr. Monty was responsible for the chalk outlines of weapons, nudging people along with helping uncover and develop perk machines, the Pack-a-Punch machine. Dropping, if you've ever played a Zombies game, you'll see these little power-ups that drop on the map, double points, insta-kill, max ammo. He dropped those on the map. This Dr. Monty is the reason for these video game mechanics. And anytime any one of us, at any one of these maps, you would die, he started over again. Until you moved on to the next map. Until that crew moved on to the next map. Case in point, if they died in Shinonuma, he reset them. If they died again, he reset them again until they were successful to move on to Deriz. And so on and so forth. At every single map that Primus and Ultimus exists, or any map that furthers the main storyline, he's creating a time loop until they are successful.
So a brand new character.
Yep.
Okay.
Dr. Monty. At this point, he's just a voice. He says that he's... Go ahead.
I'm so confused. Okay, so we have not seen Milton again since Newtown.
Nope. Well, not since Transit, because he was part of the Transit crew.
Oh, okay. He went from Newtown to the train.
Yeah.
Okay. I think
You're still back in Milton, and we're 2 games ahead.
I'm so scared. We still not know why Samantha attacked Nixon in the game.
Not yet.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss that part.
Fractures. So, Dr. Monty's a little pissed and is trying to help them fix shit. So, they go ahead and collect Nikolai's soul. Then they meet up with, they go to this paradise dimension land where Dr. Richterfin's plan is coming to completion. Dr. Monty, I don't know, I think is more better explained in the last map. Final map of Black Ops 3. I'm gonna do this. So for the dates, I'll put it down here. There's plenty of space on this one. The dates.
No, getting Revelations.
Date, not applicable. The date is not applicable. Because this map happens in a side dimension created by Dr. Monty as a fresh start. No zombies, no evil, nothing. It's a separate timeline, so we cannot place it anywhere on the timeline because it happens outside of the timeline. It's supposed to be the start of a new world. So they collect the souls. They go back to the house that they keep talking about. And they meet up with Dr. Maxis, Ludwig Maxis from Origins, the guy whose brain was cut out.
Are we seeing his body or
His body. We're seeing Dr. Maxis himself. It's him. And we hear him say the same lines we heard him call out to Samantha at the ending cutscene of Origins. We hear him say the same lines as they arrive at the house. So that ties Revelations with Origins. Them arriving at Revelations is the ending of Origins. Revelations, they're successful with building the new world. They use the souls to make child versions of themselves, innocent, young, new. And everything seems like it's about to go good. But then Dr. Maxis hears someone calling out to him. He goes down to the basement, and I believe it was the teleporter that they'd used for them to get there. Something was calling out to him, and he interacted with it, and he released the Shadow Man. The Shadow Man that I forgot to mention was the name that they gave for the evil tentacle squid dude in Shadows of Evil. The Shadow Man. Yeah.
I had two questions.
This is where we're about to learn the deep lore. The Skyward Sword lore. That
I
era.
had two questions, and I can only think of one now. But what happened to Electro?
Electro?
The electricity.
Avogadro, dude?
Where he's still
At the time, it wasn't really explained. It was just part of the map. Once you release him, he just kept bothering you all the time.
I can't think of it.
They just left the place. It's like, all right, you could fuck around here. We'll leave.
Alright.
They actually no, they got teleported out by Richtofen. So who knows what the fuck he did?
I had a question about Revelation. It wasn't even all over. Is this a mission in the Zombies game?
Revelations.
Or is this full cutscenes?
This is a new map, but this is the intro cutscene. The intro cutscene is pretty long.
Okay.
So it is Dr. Maxis interacting with that thing and accidentally releasing the Shadow Man. Out of his own volition, he was kind of being a little bit manipulated. Because this was a new body that Dr. Maxis created for him. When back in Origins, we find out that what happened to the drone with the Maxis brain in it. Dr. Richtofen sent the drone to the house, the dimension with the house that Revelations takes place in, and Dr. Monty is there, takes the soul from the brain and puts it in a new body, a new Dr. Max's body. He just makes him a new body. Very powerful being, apparently, clearly. This is where we start to learn about Revelations. Now, the cool part about this map, just as a map in general, is we revisit a ton of old maps in that map. But they're all kind of lumped together. It's all very spacey and like mashed together. We see Nocturne Doten. We see pieces of Deriz. We see pieces of Kino. We see pieces of Shangri-La. Pieces of a lot of the classic maps. All put together. We learn through lore, through collectibles, and the Easter egg that in the beginning, there was the Apothecans. At the beginning of time, there was the Apothecans, and they had the original beings, very powerful beings. And there was also the ether. They existed in the ether, a dimension where they subsided. Now, for every dark there is light, so there was also the dark ether, the antithesis to the ether. The dark ether would corrupt things and such. Some of the Apothecans had discovered the dark ether and were subsequently corrupted by it. Dr. Monty was one of the more powerful Apothecans, and the Shadow Man was also an Apothecan, corrupted by the dark ether. The Apothecans are what we saw were the keepers, the creepy looking motherfuckers in Shadows of Evil that were actually the good guys. So through the dark ether, we learned that some of the Apothecans were contorted and corrupted, so they became looking a lot more like Lovecraftian monsters. Tentacly, mutated, stuff like that. They looked kind of similar to Apothecans, but Apothecans, which they call themselves the Keepers now, looked more uniform, humanoid, stuff like that. But the corrupted ones, the Dark Keepers, or the Dark Apothecans, were fucked up. We see during the same long cutscene, things are released, Apothecans are back, the Shadow Man re-releases the Apothecans from the Dark Ether back into that new universe, so that way they can continue what they were doing, fucking things up. And a very interesting point that's not really focused on during the cutscene is there's this large Leviathan-like creature that shoots a blue meteor out of its mouth into a portal going who knows where, and it looks, the shape is exactly the same as the meteor that we find at the edge of Shinonuma. Thus kickstarting introducing element 115 into this timeline.
This is from a Leviathan in Revelation.
Yes, one of the corrupted Apothecans. Yes, one of the corrupted Apothecans. They were responsible at that point in time. In non-time, they were responsible for introducing element 115 into not just the main timeline, but all timelines. Any possible timelines. And thus start corrupting things. Element 115 is native to the Dark Ether. So we also learn, go ahead.
Origins was a mean kid, but those.
But the toys was a red herring. It was a red herring.
But
Those kids are in Revelations.
but also the Primus gang shows up in Revelations to Dr. Max's.
Yes, because they brought the souls. They collected the souls of their the main timeline versions of themselves and brought them in. Because they weren't going to get their own souls. They wanted to live too.
So the Primus gang is just chilling out outside of time and working with Marty.
Yeah,
Okay.
at this point in time.
On
Yes, Dr. Monty. We learned that there was a great war that happened at the beginning of time between the Apothecans and the corrupted Apothecans. So the main corrupted, led by Dr. Monty, were successful, were victorious, and sealed away the corrupted ones into the Dark Ether. They leaked out a little bit in Shadows of Evil, but we learn now that this kind of side pocket, this side timeline was deleted after that by Dr. Monty. Because the Shadow Man was released at that point. So he just deleted the timeline. He deleted that universe. Once the Easter egg is completed and they successfully defeat the Shadow Man, the final end credit scene shows Dr. Monty with the 4 premise crew. Everything looks back to normal again. The house is nice. Prairies, very nice, very fresh, all new. And it says, now that the Apothecans have been destroyed, now we can start anew. And then he points out, now it's just a matter of what to do with you 4. And then he notices there's these blood vials, these empty blood vials. Now, before, they were blood vials on Dr. Richtopen's character model, which we thought were just flavor. But now the blood vials are empty. And he says those blood vials, they're from timelines that we've already erased. Those blood vials, we learn later on, come from members from that deleted timeline, creating a paradox. The paradox being that there still exists matter from a universe that should not exist, and they drank that blood. Now, the specific mechanics of it, like why does it matter that that blood is still there, and how does that make them protect them? Kind of hand-waved, but the idea is that blood shouldn't exist because he already deleted anything that exists from that universe. I mean, so that way they can't take it away from him. That's the assumption, is that if they drink it, they can't lose it if it's already inside of them. That's the assumption.
All right.
I mean, why do they have to drink it? I don't know. For dramatic effect, I guess. So, Dr. Richtopen's like, I was wondering when you were going to ask about that. He says they're from realities we've already closed off. They shouldn't be here. They can't be here. It says now everything's going to get messed up again. And Dr. Richtopen suggests maybe you can send us somewhere else, somewhere we've never been. And Dr. Monty replies with, well, maybe I could just delete all of you, and you see them starting to fade away. And he says, hang on. Actually, that all works out perfectly. Camera zooms into Dr. Monty's eye, zooms back out, it's Tank's face. It keeps zooming out. It's Tank with the other three, the premise one from Origins. But they're wearing the medieval garb that the statues had in Origins, and they have the elemental staves. And all four of them are wielding them, holding them aloft with other people around them. They hold aloft, the image turns to like a hand-drawn version of them, a hand-drawn still, labeled the premise group. Dr. Monty sent them back to the beginning of their timeline, their alternate timeline, where they were those original wielders of the staffs. Later to be reincarnated as their origin selves, learn about their sent back selves, thus completing one of the biggest time loops. Everything happens as it does. They go back to the beginning.
The timeline's getting fractured as part of the timeline.
Yes. Everything that happens and has happened will continue to happen in a time loop. The only thing that's not in the time loop is the dimension that Revelations takes place in. And the cutscene ends with the end.
But Revelations exists within the time loop. That's where he sits.
It's outside of the main the time loop. It's outside. It's a separate dimension. It's like everything else here is a time loop. Exactly. So I think of it like kind of it technically creates a time split.
It's a time like C, and then
It's technically a split because at that point Monty sends those four back to the beginning, but Monty stays there with the souls of the other four, with the kids, and continues on making a new world. So from Dr. Monty's perspective, they're just gone. He sent them back to the beginning. He didn't rewind time. He sent them back in time. In the other time. That's Black Ops 3, and it ended with the end. Not everyone loved it. Some people liked it. It was a alright ending, personally. Then the next Treyarch game was called Black Ops 4. Now people thought, okay, it was the end. It has to be the end. There's still some plot threads missing. Maybe they'll start a new zombie story, because they confirmed zombies were coming back. So yes and no. They did continue the story, and they did make a new story. that was one of the downfalls of Black Ops 4 Zombies, is that they were trying to not only tie up any loose ends of this fuckery of a timeline, of a story, but start a new story just fresh at the same time. So they're trying to do two stories at the same time. The new one having no connection to the original one. It's like a whole new story. Not an alternate timeline, not an alternate dimension, it's just a new story. So we won't cover that one. So obviously things were split between those maps. So one map for this timeline, which we now call the Aether story, and the other one we called the, I don't remember what that one, because they didn't even continue it with the new game. People didn't like it. So only 4 maps were released for the Aether storyline. The first one that shipped with the game happens, where is it? Happens, whoops, that's the wrong color. I'm gonna use a similar color. July 4th, 1941. Blood of the Dead. The name should be familiar because it's similar to Mob of the Dead. Except it's Blood of the Dead, and it happens in 41 in the alternate timeline. But the timeline was deleted by Dr. Monty, according to Revelations. Shadows of Evil exists on that alternate timeline. He deleted that entire dimension. So how can this map happen? Well, we learn in this map, we're still back in Alcatraz. Huh? Oh, okay. We just got 4 more maps. Blood of the Dead. We're treated back with the Premise crew from Origins. They find themselves at going into the Alcatraz prison, seemingly empty. Dr. Richtofen leading the group down to the labs that were found under Alcatraz, meeting with another version of himself, another Premise Richtofen from Buried, the same type one. So he has the same clothes, everything, same character model. It's another one of him there with the chronorium, the summoning key, and the blood vials. So clearly, the crew we're following going into Blood of the Dead, the crew we're following is a crew that went to Alcatraz to collect those blood vials from the 4 mobsters and then take them on to Revelation so they can live and thus start the time loop, continue the time loop. But then the Richtofen that's already there tells them, like, all right, here's the blood vials, the book, and then you remember. So he's like another Richtofen. So this is really solidifying that Richtofen was doing a lot of shit in the background, aside from the other 3 characters with the summoning key, with the chronorium, securing their, I guess, survivability, so they won't just get deleted at the end of Revelations. Then that Richtofen tells the Richtofen we entered with to read the chronorium, but he says he's already read it. That's how he knows what to do. The chronorium basically tells him what he's going to do and how to continue this time loop. But then the second Richtofen they meet there, as he opens a teleporter, a rift, a portal, and is about to step into it, he tells him, read it again. And so the Richtofen we entered with starts reading it, and the pages have changed. We don't know what it says. He just says the pages have changed. And he throws it in frustration. The book lands on the floor with pages open, and it closes itself. And so they're trying to escape, trying to continue so this is what we learned. This is where they went to after the end of Zetsubo no Shima. At that ending cutscene when they said we need to do one other thing first before going to Goat Crovy. So this happens chronologically between Zetsubo and Goat Crovy. They leave Zetsubo, go to Mob of the Dead, collect the blood samples, then go to Goat Crovy, then Revelations. But something's changed. When they're about to leave the Alcatraz prison, the warden shows up, the fucked up demonic warden, and breaks or just busts through the portal, stranding them there, and they have to try to survive. During that Easter egg, at the end, when we spawn into the map, in the main spawn room, we see 4 cryogenic chambers, and we see inside those cryogenic chambers the bodies of the Victus crew. Contained in there from buried and die-rise and transits. So, another point to note, this is where this becomes relevant now. There were comic books released after Black Ops 2 to explain what happens with the Victus crew after buried. So essentially they go to some other Broken Arrow facility. Sam doesn't have the voice in his head anymore. Samuel doesn't have the voice in his head. Dr. Richter's talking to him anymore, so he feels kind of lost. Go ahead.
Which ending of Buried is this continuing?
So the canonic ending is the Maxis ending, where they survive, where they still get to live, and Richter Finn's soul was put into a zombie's body.
But that's the ending. He didn't sick the zombies after that.
No.
Okay.
Not really, but the zombies are still zombies.
Yeah,
So
okay.
he didn't intentionally direct them at him. They just got like, all right, you help me,
He didn't tell them
fuck you.
not to attack them.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay.
So zombie Richter Finn's still trying to chase them down, still trying to stop them. They go to a Broken Arrow facility, try to figure out what the fuck to do. Now the Primus Richter Finn with the summoning key is directing them to trying to help them get to the Broken Arrow facility, and then eventually puts them into the cryogenic chambers, or teleports them to Mob of the Dead, puts them in those cryogenic chambers for future use. Primus Richter Finn with the summoning key post Shadows of Evil. Once he has, when he yoinked the summoning key from the peeper at the end of the.
Before he got trapped in Mob of the Dead.
Correct. It's like after Shadows of Evil, he has a summoning key. So these other maps happen not necessarily in chronological order, because he has a summoning key that lets him go through space and time, travel through space and time. And on top of what happens outside of those maps, he does stuff in the background outside of those maps, unbeknownst to the other 3 members of his team. So those 4, that's how those 4 are in those cryogenic chambers in Blood of the Dead. Then, at the ending cutscene, or to the end of the Easter egg, at the very, very end, we see that the 4 Primus crew trying to escape. There's this large device with a chair in it that the warden has developed to kind of, for some reason, no one knows what the warden was going to use it for, but eventually we know what it ends up doing, or what it ends up being used for. We don't know what the warden's plan was. He never really explains it. Just being demonic and dramatic. So what they do is they realize someone has to sit in that chair, and the chair is designed to basically drain the blood out of you. It's got syringes all along the sides. It sticks you, pulls the blood out of you to power the device, to essentially try to destroy that pocket purgatory dimension. Whoever's playing Richter Finn has to sit in that chair. So, according to the story, Dr. Richter Finn sacrifices himself to sit in that chair. He doesn't know if he's going to be released after that or not, but he puts himself in that chair. So what happens to the player who's playing Richter Finn? Well, we see a wall open up down where the cryogenic chambers are, and we see a 5th cryo chamber. And we see, what are they called? Great War Richter Finn. The one with the tunic, with the medieval tunic, step out of that cryo chamber and join the fight, and he has a crystal with him, an elemental crystal basically. He helps them fight off the warden. Dr. Richter Finn from Primus is still strapped to that chair, being bled out, begging to be released. Great War Richter Finn comes up, tells them he would be sorry, but he's not. Leaves them there, and before that, he hands the chronorium and the summoning key to Nikolai. And he tells them to read the chronorium, that things have changed. They no longer need the blood vials. He takes the blood vials, shatters them. And so all of them take portals, teleport away. The Primus Richtofen is left there to bleed out as the color drains from that dimension. The dimension still exists, but it's dead, as well as Dr. Richtofen. So that was Blood of the Dead. So we're now breaking the time loop. Originally, they go from from Zetsubo no Shima to Blood of the Dead, collect the blood samples, the blood vials from the mobsters, go to Gorod Krovi, then to Revelations, get sent to the Great War, seemingly disappear from history, reincarnate, origins, starts all over again. Over and over again. Something changed that now instead of just getting there, collecting the blood samples willy-nilly, everything goes to plan, something happened, it changed things. Now the timeline is broken, the time loop is broken. They no longer need those blood vials. Next map released is Classified. This one, back to the black marker. I'll put it down here. November 5th, 1963. Classified. This map happens in the Pentagon. The day before 5 happens. There is still some debate on exactly when Classified happens. Even the official timeline makes it a little murky. Because how could it happen at the exact same time? How could it happen before? Because according to the map, based on the way the map is designed, it looks completely derelict and run down, and there's a whole bunch of destruction everywhere. But in 5, which happens the day after, it's clean with the politicians there. So that's the part that doesn't make sense. You can chalk that up to just aesthetic differences, like limitations in the old consoles that 5 couldn't really be designed with such detail, but now they can. But story-wise, Classified happens. We play as the Ultimus crew. Chronologically, or story-wise, what happens in Classified is after the Ultimus crew finish on Moon, somehow those 3 are teleported back to Classified in 1963. Yes, with Dr. Richtofen's catatonic body, because his soul left his body. His body's not dead, there's no brain activity. But then for some reason his soul returns, and he's just back again. So, it is the 4 of them hanging out there, being kept in the Pentagon to be researched later, assumingly. Zombies break out, they try to survive. The not sticky part, but what was the frustrating part at this point was normally Easter eggs are an active process. You find triggers, you do this, you do that. There were no triggers found. Not even through data mining. There were no triggers found in game to do the Easter egg. And what's more is it was, according to data miners, you had to go to around 100 and like something to trigger the cutscene, to trigger the ending cutscene. At the time, the game itself was so poorly developed, it kept blue screening and crashing before anyone get anywhere close to those rounds. So the cutscene wasn't officially released until someone data mined the cutscene from the files. And so we got that cutscene. It is the 4 of them in a cell, just talking about like How are you back, Richtofen? What the fuck is going on? And then the premise crew, the ones that just left Blood of the Dead, teleport themselves into that cage with them, and they're gonna take them to somewhere else. They ask for their help to do something else. That's the ending cutscene for Classified. Once you hit that round, I don't remember what round number it was, but the cutscene just starts. Then, second to last map. Alpha, Omega, this is where they head off after. Still in the main timeline. I'll put it over here, even though it's not really gonna make sense. October 13th, 2035. Alpha, Omega. Now this happens in Nuketown, after it has already been destroyed. Nuketown Zombies, the original map happens in 2025, so this happens after the Earth was nuked, and then at the end of this map, they nuked the test site because it's still a test site, nuclear test site, so it's even more fucked up. In Alpha Omega, you can play as either the Ultimus crew, members of the Ultimus crew, or the Primus crew. You just spawn in randomly as one of those 8. The story here, although the Easter egg itself at this point, we're at the end of the storyline of the development of Zombies. It's become so complex. There's so much to do and so much to complete. But the story itself does not feel very substantial. Now, it is my personal belief that it is because at this time in Black Ops 4, they had just switched from a 3-year development cycle to a 2-year development cycle. So what they were originally planning to develop for 3 years, they only had 2 years. For one, Black Ops 4, they cut out the campaign. The first Call of Duty to ship with no campaign, no story mode. Zombies felt very unfinished. The game itself always blue screened a lot. Not just for Zombies, but multiplayer wasn't very stable. So obviously multiplayer for Call of Duty has become the biggest thing of it. So multiplayer took most of the attention away from Zombies. There was the Zombies development crew, and there's the multiplayer crew. Activision had forced Treyarch to divert a lot of resources from the Zombies development team to the multiplayer development team, which is what I believe led to the downfall of the story. Now this was clearly meant to be the end, and another clue for why it was the end is they transitioned from fully animated CGI rendered cutscenes back to the animated comics book style ending cutscenes. As well as the story seemed very hack and slashed. As well as they were also trying to work on a new story that no one was liking. So Alpha Omega, they are there to try to what was it again? What's his name again? The idea there was to try to what was it again? What's his name? There's just this one and then just one more. The story itself was basically they were trying to stop some stuff that was happening there at what we just now learned was another facility under Nuketown. And we see another version of the Avogadro, the electric dude from Transit. This time since no, it's because of the fractures, things changed, butterfly effect style. So he was no longer contained at the transit facility, but under Nuketown. They defeat him, he's trying to stop them for X reasons. They defeat electricity dude, the Avogadro, with the help of, at this time, for some reason, a Samantha that was controlling the zombies for some reason. It was never really fully explained, which is another clue for why the fucking story just tanked. cutscene, Easter egg ends last map. The final map of the zombie storyline. This one is on the main timeline. Actually, it's never fully explained which one it was. Technically, it could happen on either one. So I'll put it over here. No, my bad. I'll just put it down here. Sometime in 1965, Tag der Toten. Now we are back with the Victus crew that was on ice in Blood of the Dead and saved from the Transit, Die Rise, and Buried crew. 1965. This time, Dr. Richtofen with the summoning key had... not Dr. Richtofen. Remember that in Blood of the Dead, Nikolai was given the chronorium and the summoning key to try to break the cycle and change things up. No one knew what his final plan was, especially not in Alpha Omega. What his ultimate goal was. How was he gonna save them? How was he gonna break the cycle? How was he gonna try to fix things? In Tag der Toten, Nikolai releases them from their cryo chambers in Blood of the Dead, sends them to the Siberian facility that Call of the Dead happens in 1965, in Tag der Toten. There, they are tasked with completing construction of another device, another apothecary device, the Agartha device, capable of, how do they put it, completing the wielder's will. Whatever you want whatever you want to happen, just happens. It's not exactly a wish because you're not wishing for anything. You think it does it. It's supposed to be more powerful than the summoning key, which by itself is already stupid powerful. So they construct it, and for Nikolai, and Nikolai takes it. They complete the Easter egg. This is the final cutscene of Zombies. The final cutscene. It is Nikolai has taken the rest of his premise crew and the Ultimus crew that helped them in Alpha Omega. They are now in the forest. It's not really explained where the forest is, but they're hidden away from Dr. Monty because by Alpha Omega, Dr. Monty has caught wind of what this Nikolai is doing, changing things up, and has killed Dr. Maxis, the Dr. Maxis that was helping them earlier, the one that he fixed up, and for Revelations. So they were hiding from Dr. Monty, and that's why we're playing as the Victus crew, because Nikolai couldn't reveal themselves to Dr. Monty, so he asked Victus crew to help build the Agarthan device in Tag der Toten. They're in the forest. They're enjoying the night together, all of them drinking, eating, being merry. There's radios throughout the map, through that one and Alpha Omega, of them just kind of sharing stories, singing, talking, just vibing. Then it cuts to them all asleep, passed out and drunk. Nikolai just narrating with platitudes. Then it pans back in the reverse direction, and they are all dead. Everyone except Nikolai. And he has Samantha and Eddie with him. He has poisoned the rest of the premise crew and all of the Ultimus crew. Except from the Ultimus crew, the original Dr. Richtofen, when he dies, he comes back as Zombie Richtofen again. And that's where we learn that Dr. Richtofen, that he uses that Zombie Dr. Richtofen to contact Samuel, cargo shorts dude from Victus, to contact him to help them, to instruct him to build the Agarthan device for Nikolai. So the ending cutscene technically happens right before the map starts. And explains why they're doing that and how they're able to do that. Then he shoots zombie Richtofen once everything's completed, killing everyone else. It's just him with Samantha, the innocent version, and Eddie, which is basically like the innocent version of Edward Richtofen.
Oh, his name is Edward?
Yep.
Oh,
So
man.
this is where it's revealed that Nikolai's plan all along was not to try to preserve their lives, to try to just break the cycle so they can live their own lives, but instead to wipe everything. The main timeline, alternate timeline, the Shadow Man, and Dr. Monty, using the Agarthan device. With you, go ahead. This is a premise Nikolai, the younger version.
Primus Nikolai?
Premise Nikolai.
I thought this was the Nikolai that never met Rick because he got killed. I thought this was a variant of Ultimate Nikolai.
No, that was the premise group. So like after Black Ops 1, aside from Alpha Omega, we never play as the Ultimates crew again. So this premise Nikolai, his plan was to just delete everything. He kills the rest of the crew, and he asks Samantha to kill him. Samantha shoots him in the head. Oh, before that, he uses the Agarthan device to destroy the summoning key, and then asks Samantha to shoot him and kill him, ending everyone else, leaving just Samantha and Eddie with, and every timeline, every universe is wiped. We cut to the Victus crew in Tag der Toten. Samuel calling out for Dr. Richtofen, saying we did everything you asked, and everything wiping, fading to black. All these scenes from these main timelines wiping to black. Now it's just Samantha and Eddie in a void, walking towards a light. And that is the end of the Call of Duty Zombies timeline. Filled with a lot of fuckery.
I don't like Call of Duty.
At first, it was really good, but then it was like, alright, and then once you get to the future, it was like,
What do you mean down? That shit was fucking crazy.
so I mean, like, when it comes to the quality of writing, it was like, I also.
Yeah, because things got really cramped because a lot of things happened at the end.
I'm okay with it ending at the end for
Oh, no, I did enjoy that.
I like this.
The whole, like, going back in time and becoming, like, crusade form is very much reminds me of Evil Dead. Where
Oh,
Evil Dead
okay.
or Dark, when they go back to, like, medieval times. Kind of reminds me of that.
Technically, this story can continue.
With me and him.
It can. Because Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is supposed to be called the Dark Aether storyline. The Dark Aether storyline, which is, they never confirmed it. They've never confirmed it themselves, but it seems like this is the new world that they've created after deleting everything.
The reverse.